MMA podcast.
Get your listening ears ready. It's episode numero tres. That's number 3 to our English-speaking listeners. On the first take of this recording, I said episode 4. I was getting ahead of myself, and my co-host, ESK, Spencer Kite, corrected me. I'm Erik Fontanez, by the way. ESK, are we on episode number 3 already?
We are on episode number 3 already. You did try to get ahead of ourselves. We are going to get to episode 4, but we're taking
number
it
4 eventually.
Like every athlete, there is one game at a time here at the Choke MMA podcast. So we're only on number 4.
Step at a time, exactly.
That's right.
And episode number 3 is going to be your last for 3 weeks because you're going to already abandon us and go on vacation to Ireland or something like that.
I'm already putting in for vacation and being like, whew, 3 weeks was tough. I gotta peace out. My wife and I, along with her brother and his lovely wife, are heading over to Ireland for 2 weeks of Irish countryside relaxation, with a couple days of Dublin city enjoyment in there. I will also be working because, let's be honest, I can't really get away from work ever.
Yeah, but you're getting away from this, which, is kind of considered work.
But this is fun. This is enjoyable work. And I mean, not that the work I'm going to be doing over there isn't enjoyable. I'll be hitting up the Straight Blast gym in Ireland to have a little sit down and chat with Conor McGregor and Cale Pendred, 2 of the promising stars from that gym. Conor McGregor, of course, phenomenal UFC debut, already promised to be on the upcoming Fox Sports 1 show in Boston.
Fox Sports 111
this summer. Yes, 1-1.1, whatever they're going to call it. And Cale Pendred fighting Che Mills, UFC vet, June 1st for the Cage Warriors welterweight title that he won last time out. So get a chance to get in there and talk to those lads and their coach, John Kavanagh, who also does some work with Gunny Nelson as well. So should be interesting. Going to try to watch the 2 events. Of course, I'm going the 2 weeks where there are actually 2 events on the UFC calendar this month. So I'm going to see what the viewing potential is like. It will obviously be bright and early in the morning if I do try to watch it. And so it may take away from some of the traveling and touring plans that we have lined up. So I may miss out on a couple events, but we'll see.
Well, I think the fact that you're going to see Conor McGregor is all, that's all the touring you need to do, because I'm sure he'll take you on a whirlwind ride of Ireland with just what he tells you. I mean, the guy is story. Lovely to listen to.
I'm looking forward to it. It should be a good time. It will be our first real vacation, like our first extended, not going to visit family back in Ontario or somewhere else vacation, I think, since we got married, which was 4 years ago. So
wow.
Yeah.
Treating the wife, and it only took you 4 years. Congratulations.
More like my wife treating me, because she is very much the breadwinner in this family.
Attaboy. That's how you
very much
do it.
Charge.
That is how you do it. Sugar mama.
I'm along for the ride, man. I'm here to do a little bit of cleaning. I'm here to take care of the dog. I'm here to cook meals.
You can cook.
And let's be honest, I'm a little bit of eye candy.
You are a handsome man. Two very, very ugly people.
Yes.
But anyway, in terms of MMA, we have some news that happened this week. Shane Carwin retired. We're going to talk about his retirement, reflect on his career a little bit, talk about which was his best fight. Also, for the local MMA fan, XFC stripped Nick Newell of the lightweight title. Nick Newell, if you don't know who that is, Google him. He has one arm, ladies and gentlemen, and he was able to win the company or the promotion's lightweight title with that. Also, Anderson Silva, the champion of the UFC's middleweight division, was fined $50,000 for skipping out on a media event in Los Angeles. Mind you, I live in Los Angeles, and I didn't even know about the media event, so I didn't get fined. Why is Anderson Silva getting fined? Doesn't make sense. Also, we'll touch on Mark Hunt having trouble getting into the country from New Zealand. I have some tips for him on how to avoid Border Patrol and get his way to Las Vegas for UFC 160. And later on, we'll do something for the first time we've done on this podcast, listener and reader mail. Yes, we actually have listeners and readers that have questions for us to answer. But before we do that, let's get to the news of the week. An MMA career he has no longer. Shane Carwin, the UFC's former interim heavyweight champion, retired from competition and is now just an engineer. I think that's what his day job was. He never really left that day job when he was beating people's heads off in the UFC. But yeah, So now he does that full time, and his UFC days and MMA days are behind him. Shane Carwin, ESK, what are your thoughts on the career of this 265-pound monster of a man?
A really good career, and I always enjoyed.
Awesome.
Yeah, I always enjoyed talking to Shane. He sort of stands as, or stood, I should say, as the last kind of remnant of the colossal heavyweight trend that we had for a little bit in the UFC with Brock Lesnar, with Shane Carwin, with Frank Mir when he did his bulk up to compete with those two guys that were at the top of the weight class at the time. Yeah, lots of bench pressing, lots of protein shakes.
You even lift, bro?
Shane's a guy that, it's I'm sure it kind of sucks for him to go out on 2 straight losses, to go out with a number of injuries really being the end of his career. But a guy that had a very successful run through his first 4 fights, came within a matter of seconds and a Josh Rosenthal judgment call of being the UFC heavyweight champion. Mm-hmm. And just a guy that, in his first 4 fights absolutely trucked people and sort of gave you that, like, it was the height of, like, that was the don't blink time, and now everybody uses the don't blink and we're able to blink. But Shane Carwin is the one dude that could say, like, don't blink, and you were like, I'm definitely not going to blink, because he was knocking dudes out. And in 44 seconds, Christian Wellish, 91 seconds, Neil Wayne, a minute and 10 seconds, Gabe Gonzaga, finished Frank Mir in the first round, put a beating on Brock Lesnar for the first 5 minutes of their fight. Like, really was a dude that came out and looked to finish early, did so in his first 4 fights, won an interim title. That's obviously something that you can never take away from him. That's always going to be on his mantle, and had a very solid career.
Knocked out Frank Mir in doing so.
Yeah, and was a top 5, top 10 heavyweight pretty much for his entire UFC career. Just on the fact that he was a guy that, you couldn't stop him for a while. Eventually everybody loses, everybody gets stopped, but a really good run, and a tip of the cap to Shane. I know he's got a bunch of other stuff that he's involved in, as you said, a day job, growing family. So he will be just fine. He will do well. I wish him the best and say thank you for the memories. His
entire career of 14 fights, he didn't have a decision until his very last fight.
Right.
He stopped or was stopped only once in that span in every fight. Up until then, he was TKOing guys. He even had a few submissions on his record. Up until he met Brock Lesnar at UFC 116, he was regarded as probably one of the top heavyweights in the world. And I was at that fight, sitting cage side and watching the action in the first round. I literally thought that the fight was going to be stopped when Shane was just hammering down on Brock, landing punches. Brock looked out. That fight would have been stopped. It would have been stopped if this was one of 10 fights 9 others would have been stopped by the point Brock was lying there against the cage on the ground. But luckily for Brock, it went the ref didn't step in. The fight kept going, got to the second round, and you could obviously tell that in the second round, Shane was totally tired, drained, gassed out. He didn't have any energy left because he used it all up when he was landing all those punches on Brock. And then Brock pulls some jiu-jitsu out of his shorts and submits Carwin with an arm triangle. And then, in his last fight, he fought Junior Dos Santos to the only fight that he had that went all 3 rounds, all 15 minutes. And by the end of that fight, his face was looking battered, bruised, something straight out of The Walking Dead even. And but still, hats off to him. He went 3 rounds with the former UFC heavyweight champion, almost beat and should have beat, in my opinion, a heavyweight champion at the time in Brock Lesnar. An illustrious career, I think, for Shane Carwin. Bravo, tip of the hat to you, sir. Well done in your UFC and MMA stint. Moving on.
Interesting anecdote. It turns out that the hosts of this podcast, live viewers of each of Shane Carwin's 2 losses. You are at UFC 116.
We are
UFC
bad
130.
luck.
UFC 131, obviously up here in my backyard over in Vancouver. And maybe Shane Carwin will hear this one day and be like, those guys just should have not come to my fights.
Yeah.
That would have been better.
We're total bad luck. Sorry,
curses.
Shane. We didn't mean to curse you in your MMA career. But at least you're not Nick Newell. Nick Newell, the now former XFC lightweight champion of the world, was stripped of his title. The XFC president came out today and said that Mr. Newell wants to fight only ex-UFC guys, and that he refused to fight his next challenger. And now, as a result of that, Mr. President says that's unprofessional, and he's stripping Nick of the title. Didn't say that he was released or cut, however. He just wished him the best in his future endeavors, which I guess basically means he's cut and he's done. ESK, do you think this is fair that Nick Newell is getting his gold belt taken away from him?
Sure. I mean, fair is a word that I think we throw around way too much in this sport, and it has no real place because life isn't fair. And,
well, that's not fair.
And all these decisions, fairness really, is it fair to who? Could you make an argument for Nick Newell that it's not fair that, he's not getting the opportunities that he wants and things of that nature? Absolutely. But from a business standpoint, if your champion says, no, I don't want to fight this guy that you want me to fight, and I only want to fight guys that are on this list, then absolutely it's fair to say, well, that's not what we can make happen. That's not what's on the table right now. So give us back our belt, and there's the door. It's an unfortunate look for both Nick Newell and the XFC, who have really sort of jointly benefited from Nick's rise and his success over the last couple of years. So to see sort of that relationship fall apart because of this is unfortunate. I can understand Nick Newell's stance and his sort of desire to only want to fight ex-UFC guys as sort of the way, that's kind of the way it works on the regional circuit. And as you're trying to make your way into the UFC, you get to that point where you start needing to beat some recognizable names and piling up some victories over guys that have Wikipedia pages and familiar faces on their SureDog Fight Finder resume. But at the same time, you have an obligation to that organization. You have a contract with them. You're their champion. And so if they can't bring a guy in that meets your criteria, where do you sort of set aside your desires and say, okay, it's another fight, it's another paycheck, it's a chance to get another win. And regardless of who it is, if it's impressive enough, like his last win was when he won the title against Eric Reynolds, people are going to notice. I mean, Nick Newell's a guy that we talk about leading into his fights and have for the last few fights, because it's a great story, because it's an interesting story that a lot of people want to cover and want to discuss. So it really, to me, it really, I understand the desire to have that former UFC name across from you, but there's also so many guys in that group now that it's sort of lost some of the shine that it carried in the past, I guess.
Right. Now, and for those who don't know, Nick Newell, XFC, local promotion. Why are we talking about this on a national level? Well, Nick is a one-handed fighter, and with this disability, he captured the XFC lightweight title in his last fight, was supposed to defend against Scott Holtzman on June 14th, told XFC president John Prisco that he only wants to fight ex-UFC guys. Scott Holtzman, sorry, buddy, but you're not a ex-UFC guy. Newell says, no, I'm not having it, allegedly. Nobody's been able to get a comment from Nick yet. Spencer, do you think that because of the one-handed thing, that the XFC and John Prisco are going to have some negative light shine on them?
I mean, I think in any situation where you have a person in Nick Newell's situation, he's a congenital amputee, where you have people with a disability or a handicap or race issues, there's always going to be someone or a small group of someones that step up and start shouting that this is unfair. And it's because this isn't because of Nick Newell being a congenital amputee. He was their champion. It's not as if the company has been like, well, we've got the best of this, so now we want to, like, having him as their champion is phenomenal for them. It is probably the only XFC story, and I apologize to the XFC and everyone else that has headlined shows for them in the recent past, but it's really the only XFC story that we've talked about over the last few years. And so it makes no sense to suddenly at this point turn around and be like, you know what, we don't need you anymore, kid. Peace out. It's a dispute, and these things happen. And whether Nick Newell had two arms or is a congenital amputee like he is now wouldn't have changed this. He still is at a point in his career where he's trying to build his resume and build his name with wins over recognizable fighters. So it's nothing to do with Nick Newell's disability. It is everything to do with a business disagreement and dispute. Siding
with the big man, the company, and against Nick Newell, that's almost as bad as picking against Brazilians as you always do. You're such a jerk, man. I don't even know. It's not even that I'm siding. I don't even know you anymore.
It's not even that I'm siding with the company. I very much can see both sides of this. I mean, I understand Nick Newell's desire to want to start getting some more recognizable names. And as we said, there are a lot of guys that have that former UFC fighter tag on their name out there. But it's easy for Nick Newell to say, well, bring me this guy. He's not the one that has to go out and find those fighters. He's not the guy that has to go out and pay those fighters. And the same way that everyone that's at a certain level on the regional circuit wants to fight those names, the people that are those names understand that and are able to use that as a bargaining chip and as sort of a bit of leverage in their contract negotiations and say, well, I'm the most recognizable name that's going to be on your card. You're able to put former UFC fighter on your poster and sell it that way. So it's a tough situation on every side. I respect and understand the XFC's decision. I wish it could have been resolved or could get resolved going forward in a much more agreeable fashion, but we'll have to see how it plays out. And as you said, no one's really been able to get anything from Nick Newell as of yet. I'm sure there is a spin or a slant to his side of the story that we will hear about and potentially discuss at a future date.
And Nick, being stripped of his title, will likely not fight for the XFC again, at least according to the article that was published by the XFC today, which means he will not get a payday. But that payday probably less than what was fined to Anderson Silva, $50,000. for not showing up to a media event in Los Angeles. He skipped out, pulled a Nick Diaz, as our friend Tommy Tohold says. Did his best impersonation of Nick and no-showed to a presser, and then was quoted shortly thereafter saying that I've never missed an obligation to the UFC. I always, close off my schedule so that I could focus on training. ESK, what's your take on this? Is the UFC right in fining Anderson $50K, or does Anderson have a side here that really bodes well for him?
I think, I think it's both. I mean, I think there's
down the middle.
See, you want me to just pick a side and be
I want you to pick a side. There is no gray area. You either say the UFC are jerks or the UFC is right. One side or the other, buddy. What's it going to be?
There's gray area.
Oh. Only in Canada.
I think it's great that the UFC is growing up and becoming sort of a full-fledged, fully formed, real live big boy organization or big boy sports.
Fully formed?
Big boy sports league that are fining people and suspending people and taking punitive action when guys don't meet commitments. I understand that, asking a fighter and a champion fighter at that, who is in the starting phases of getting ready for a major fight and a difficult fight, to set aside an entire day to do some meet and greet stuff and make the media rounds that is probably a 12, 13, 14-hour day, can be frustrating from Anderson's side of things and can be something that you don't want to do. But as Dana White said in sort of discussing it afterwards, these are things that are built into contracts. These are the things that need to happen to promote these fights. At the same time, I can understand Anderson Silva's frustration of, really, it's the start of my training camp. You give me this 14, 15-hour day where I have to answer the same mundane, uninteresting questions, and it's usually more mainstream media. So it's the TV shows, it's the radio stations.
Is that why I wasn't invited to this press event?
It very well could be. You may have too much insight and knowledge into the sport to be invited. Although I'm sure there was
thank you for twisting it that way. That makes me feel a whole lot better, in fact.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there was a media lunch with some of our colleagues and brethren and sistren from the area who would be there and are knowledgeable. And so I apologize that you weren't invited to that.
That's okay.
Not that I have control over it. But it's tough. I mean, I remember being with Rory McDonald last fall when he came out this way to do basically this same thing over the course of the day. And you go into some of these radio stations and they literally have printed out sort of a Wikipedia page and the last interview you did with whatever the most popular site they can find is, and just kind of ask you questions based off the answers you've already given, or the really easy things that there is to find. And that's I mean, we get tired of asking it. We get tired of hearing the same answers. So you can only imagine being on the other side of it as the fighter who's, wanting to get ready for Chris Weidman, wanting to really close everything off and focus, to have to bounce from TV studio to radio station, back to a restaurant, back to another photo shoot, where you're getting asked the same question over and over of how's training camp going and are you prepared for this, and
how much pressure.
Yeah, how much pressure?
The pressure question
is asked. Are you worried about Chris Weidman? And I get it. I understand. And really, I mean, to you and I, if somebody was like, well, Mr. Kite, that's going to cost you $50,000, I would lose it. For Anderson Silva, it's like, yeah, okay, let me go out back and pull that out of the backyard.
Let me call my friends over at Nike and have them send you a really big check.
Yeah, hang on. Let me dig in my pocket. I think I may be carrying that with me.
Now, we joke about this, like Anderson Silva has a huge amount of money from his days of fighting and his endorsements and things, but let's get something straight. Anderson Silva is one of a few that are in this position. It's not like Nick Newell is going to be all like, hey, I lost my job at the XFC. I'm fine. I mean, think about it from Eddie Alvarez's perspective at this point. He's been coming out this week and saying a bunch of things about his
selling investment properties.
Yeah, selling investment properties. I mean, he in every single interview I've heard him on this week, he's talked about, I'm okay financially. I'm okay financially. I'm okay financially. When somebody tries to convince you that many times that they're okay financially, they're probably not okay financially. The guy hasn't fought for a really long time, so I'm thinking that he's not making Anderson Silva money, as Lyoto Machida has said in the past, and he's having trouble. But Anderson, $50K, probably not that big of a deal. It would probably be less of a deal to maybe a guy in the NBA or in the NFL. But yeah, fine, $50K. Yeah. And bravo to you, Spencer, for defending Anderson towards the tail end of your rant there. And he's Brazilian, so I think you worked your way back into the hearts of our listeners.
I mean, I get it. Like the frustrating part, and we've heard George St. Pierre talk about it. Obviously, Nick Diaz has his sort of frustrations with the media. The frustrating part in this, people have constantly done the really, you criticize the media a lot and you're a media member, so that seems really weird. The frustrating part for these guys is that there's really a select group of them, and a very small group of them at that get asked to do these things and get asked to shoulder these loads. And that can be tough as well. I mean, Nick Diaz has had countdown crews at his gym several times. George St. Pierre has had countdown and primetime crews at the TriStar gym and sort of following him around.
Your countdown crew
a number of times, and that gets daunting, and we don't necessarily we want that access, but we don't necessarily understand sort of everything that goes into having cameras following you around repeatedly for a full day as you're trying to do stuff to prepare for the fact that another grown man is going to try to punch you in the face. And so I'm sure for the first 10 minutes or 10 days, probably, if a camera crew came and wanted to follow me around for the day, I'd be like, this is awesome. Yeah. But on the 11th day, I'd probably be tired of them sitting there, sticking a camera in my face, asking me about finding inspiration to write a piece. And so I get where Anderson Silva's coming from. I always have sort of thought it would be cool if the UFC kind of gave some of that shine and gave some of those opportunities to other fighters on these cards, guys that are maybe the co-main event, maybe the first fight of the main card, as a way to sort of start showcasing them. The problem, of course, is that the catch-22 of people don't necessarily know them, so they don't want to tune in, they don't want to listen, they don't want to whatever. But how do you get them to care if you're not putting them out there? Well,
I don't know about you, but even on the 11th day and the 365th day, I'd love a camera crew to be at my house, because then I'd be getting all the attention that I deserve, man.
We say that, but I really don't think we would, because there are just moments where
I'll say it again. I'd love it, because I'm an attention whore.
Well, we will find someone that we know that has camera equipment and a film company to follow you around, and we will do a year in the life of Erik Fontanez documentary.
Biggest waste of money in the history of mankind. Mark Hunt can't get to the United States. That sucks. He's been stuck in New Zealand all week. Tried boarding an airplane twice or something, and they've been telling him that he can't get in. He can't get his visa because of a 2002 scuffle, a bar scuffle that he was kind of involved in, maybe. I don't know. He says that it was a couple of dickhead friends. So what do you think, ESK? Does his 2002 scuffle warrant him not being able to travel 11 years later to the United States after he's been making travel for 11 years, fighting in different countries? Does it make sense for it to happen now?
Of course it doesn't make sense, but nothing ever does when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, if it didn't hold him up in the past, why is it holding him up now? Now, of course, we've sort of heard in the breaking down of this situation that may have been the reason that he wasn't able to fight Eric Butterbean Esch at one point in Pride. But as you said, he's made trips to North America and various other locales in the past for fights without this being an issue. So the fact that it's coming up now is sort of interesting and sort of untimely. But as we talked about off air and sort of before we got going, this is something that will get cleared up. I have no doubt about it. He will
getting cleared up right now as we're recording this.
Yeah, it's probably taken care of. We haven't seen any Mark Hunt doing the Frank Mir face pictures on his timeline lately. Of him still stuck at the airport. So I would imagine that he will have no problems. He will be in Las Vegas in the next couple of days. He will very much be in the cage with Junior Dos Santos. And we will look back on this as one of the quintessential man is it a slow Newsweek stories that sort of finds its way into a lot more time in the spotlight than it probably deserves.
Worst case scenario, Mark Hunt doesn't make it to Vegas for UFC 160. Who does Junior Dos Santos face other than you, even though you're capable?
Roy Nelson, if provided he's interested. I mean, Roy's, Las Vegas based. Heavyweights don't necessarily have to worry about cutting weight.
Especially not Roy Nelson.
Especially Roy Nelson. The biggest thing would obviously be conditioning and sort of what all's going on. It would be a great opportunity for a payday. They've fought in the past. Roy has had some success as of late. Obviously, wants to be in that mix. I think he's the easiest sort of guy to tap, especially because it's a co-main event fight. You don't really want to grab a heavyweight Ilir Latifi, if you will, to put in there opposite a former champion.
I think you're a better fit for it. I'm just saying. I mean,
I'm happy to not be punched in the face by, I don't want to get punched.
You're a 5'8" heavyweight. You have outstanding hands that you use to type words with. I mean, who's better qualified?
I'm 5'10".
Okay, sorry.
So let's get that taken care of.
I didn't know they stack crap that high.
They do. I am in the heavyweight division, though I hope in the future I will get back down to middleweight. That's sort of the goal. Light heavyweight would be cool, but my full goal is to make the middleweight limit. And I have
185.
Yeah, I have no interest in being punched in the face by other novices who have never fought. So getting punched in the face by a boxing prodigy, former UFC heavyweight champion, definitely not on my list of things to do in the future.
I am a 6'2" light heavyweight. Since we're talking about our physiques and our figures, I have taken jiu-jitsu by storm and been able to cut a bunch of weight. 190 is my target, but I'm currently floating around 205. So 15 more pounds to go. There's my jiu-jitsu plug for the day. But, I think now's about the time where we should get to something that we've never done on the podcast before. Listener and reader mail. Yes, we have listeners and readers who value our opinions. Can you believe that, Spencer?
We love the 7 of you very, very much.
All 7 of you who reload the podcast several times over to make the 50 plays that it gets on a weekly basis. So let's get to it. Listener, viewer, mail. Or not viewer. Nobody's watching this, right?
Well, they're sort of watching the YouTube feed.
Whatever. Let's get to the questions. To all of our loyal listeners, we thank you for tuning into this podcast. And a few of you were nice enough to ask us some questions relative to MMA. Well, most of you. 2 out of 3 of you. Yes, a grand total of 3 people sent us questions for listener mail this week. And we will discuss those on the Choke MMA podcast now. ESK, are you excited? Yes,
I'm
excited.
I'm stoked. I'm happy to report that it's not. There you go. I just sent mail. That's what that sound is if you heard it.
Well done.
I'm happy to report that it isn't my wife or family members or your soon-to-be wife or family members.
That's right.
Who are sending in these questions under pseudonyms. We actually have listeners. We actually have viewers, supporters. So thank you all. Let's get to the mail.
Okay. Reader mail. This one comes from Eamon. His middle name apparently is Iron Man. He asks on our Facebook page, what's the best choke you have ever seen in a competition, and who did it? Now, mind you, Gracie Mag also covers jiu-jitsu. But this post was asked to our MMA readers and followers. It was supposed to be an MMA question. We're just going to go ahead and pretend this was an MMA-related question, although it's obvious that he's asking a jiu-jitsu-related one. So we're going to pretend, Iron Man, and say that the best choke you have ever seen in an MMA fight has been by who, ESK?
There's a few. I mean, I always sit on the fence. I always qualify stuff, don't I? That's crazy.
You and your stupid gray area.
Me and my stupid gray areas. It depends what you're looking for. Like if you're looking for technical, there's some. If you're looking for, historical, there's different ones. If you're just looking for like gnarliest choke I've seen, there's some. The Brian Bowles 2-time first round 3 minutes and 30 seconds on Damasio Page is right up there just for the oddness of getting the same finish on the same fighter at the same time in two different fights. Pat Curran hitting a Peruvian necktie on Peruvian Luis Palomino is definitely up there on the memorable factor. Matt Hughes's chokes on Frank Trigger up there just because they're such memorable highlights. You obviously have to pay homage to Royce Gracie with his finish of Ken Shamrock in UFC 1. There really are just so many different ones. Like in terms of crazy that you didn't expect and that really caught me off guard, from a holy hell, that's awesome. Toby Amada's reverse inverted mounted triangle choke on Jorge Masvidal in the first season of Bellator still is right up there.
Bringing up a Bellator reference. Wow.
Bringing up a Bellator reference because it was crazy. Like we've now seen a couple inverted triangles since then, and Rich Hale got one in Bellator as well. But that was the first one that was just like, are you kidding me with this thing? Like it was just crazy. You didn't expect it. Masvidal was winning that fight up until that point. And so it's definitely on there for me. Nate Diaz's triangle with
followed by
the double gun salute. Yeah. The double gun salute to the double bird salute to the cameras, followed by the flex and what against Kurt Pellegrino is probably up there just because it's classic vintage Nate. So those would be mine. I mean, the other one that always sort of sticks in my mind for the wrong reasons is Babalu Sabral's choke of David Heath, where he didn't let go. Just because, it was a great finish, a very technical finish with an anaconda choke, something Babalu has done several times to several people, but obviously sticks in your mind because of the ramifications and not letting go and it being the end marker of Babalu's UFC career. What say you?
You and your gray areas. I swear. You can never just say, you know what? This is the one that sticks out to me the most. Of course there's a lot. There's going to be a lot.
But
you
that's
just have to pick one.
No, you don't.
Yes,
not
you do. That's the point of the question. You pick one.
I like to provide multiple answers so that people can go and look at them.
50 chokes in the midst of one question. 50.
Oh, and Scotty Jorgensen picking up Chad George against the fence with a front headlock sort of guillotine choke in the WEC was crazy.
I'll tell you one. I'll tell you one that tops all of those.
Okay.
Because you would never see this coming from either one of these guys ever in the history of the sport. Mirko Cro Cop's choke out of Pat Barry. you have Mirko Cro Cop, who's years past his prime, fighting Pat Barry, who is nervous because he's fighting a guy that he's loved for years.
Yes.
And towards the end of the fight, somehow Mirko throws on a rear naked choke and doesn't even lock in hooks. It's just kind of kneeling there. And I did this in a fundamentals class in jiu-jitsu, which was funny to me. But he locked on a rear naked choke, didn't even have the back secure, and was able to tap out Pat Barry for the best rear naked choke I've ever seen in all of MMA. Mind you, we didn't say the most technical. We just said the best. And the fact that this came from Mirko Cro Cop, who's a renowned striker, and mind you, a K1 champion now. Yeah, he won a K1 title earlier this year. Yeah, that's the best one in my eyes. So I was able to lock it down to one. ESK, you went to like 75 of them.
I think I got 75 in there.
Boo on you. Moving on. Brian on our Facebook page asks, why don't fighters take risks and go for submissions instead of burning themselves out going for knockouts? What say you, ESK?
I say, Brian, there are many, many reasons. I won't get into all of them because I'm supposed to just...
There's no gray area for knockouts versus submissions for you? You're not going to get into all of them?
No, I'm supposed to stick to one. I'm trying to grow in the midst of this show.
Wearing your big boy
Even though I have a game plan, I'm adapting to the situation, as it were.
Boy.
You can blow yourself out going for submissions as much as you can going for knockouts. I think we have seen several people that have, exhausted their arms and allowed them to fill up with lactic acid by going for chokes that aren't there.
Busting out the science. Lactic acid, you chemist.
Busting out the science. So to say why don't guys go for submissions rather than wasting their time wasting their energy going for knockouts is a little bit misguided, unfortunately. We've seen guys jump for submissions that just aren't there. It may have different implications, but it can have the same effect of tiring yourself out, whether it's, throwing crazy haymakers trying to get a knockout versus jumping for a submission that isn't there. Seems like I really like jiu-jitsu and grappling more so than I like striking question, which is cool because I love watching guys go for submissions, but I understand why people don't take unnecessary risks and burn themselves out with chokes and such.
Well, Brian, I must say, and I think a lot of fighters will say this, and a lot of fighters have said this in the midst of their interviews when they're using the same lines that they use in every interview. This is mixed martial arts. They're ready for the stand-up game, and they're ready for the ground game. They're not going to go for just one. Now, I'm thinking, Brian, that you've seen a lot of fights and guys throwing a bunch of Leonard Garcia-esque haymakers that don't really have a lot of technique, and you're saying to yourself, why is he gassing himself out doing that stuff? Why isn't he taking this to the ground and going for a Kimura or something like that? Well, Brian, you should know, and I'm pretty sure you do know, that if you try to go for submissions the entire time in an MMA fight, one thing is MMA fans are probably going to boo you. Secondly, it's just as tiring. You burn yourself out trying to force yourself from guard to side control to mount to whatever choke you could try to get. It's taxing on the body. It's not just a regular, oh, hey, I'm just going to do this and get you here because I'm really good at it. No, the guy that spends a ton of energy on the ground is spending a relatively equal amount of time burning himself out standing up. So why aren't guys taking risks and going for submissions? Well, because they have to work just as hard to do that as they are standing up. So there's your answer for you, Brian. I hope that we clarified that for you. If we didn't, send us a message on our Facebook page, www.facebook.com/GracieMag. Comment on any one of our pictures or articles there. We'd be glad to do that for you. Moving on, a gentleman by the name of Erik, and he spells it the correct way, Erik. He asks, Why is it so hard to land a jab, cross, takedown these days? And by jab, cross, takedown, he's referring to a combination. And he says, even novice, period, S, I think he meant novices, are stuffing takedowns. Is there a better combo? Spencer, what do you think? Is there a better combination than the jab, cross, takedown these days specifically?
I think I'm a fundamentals dude. I like the jab, cross, takedown fundamental. I think there is still room for it in MMA, and I think we've seen guys win fights, and you and I have talked on Twitter as guys are winning fights with a 1-2. And solely
we tweet on Twitter.
Sorry.
There's a difference.
Sorry. We've tweeted on Twitter about guys winning fights almost exclusively with a 1-2 combo. I'm thinking Evan Dunham versus Shamar Bailey a few years back. Part of the reason, and we talked about this when we went over the viewer mail before jumping on air, part of the reason that even novices are stuffing that combination or that attempt is because it is a very fundamental, a very basic takedown attempt. If you're going in and learning basics, you're learning the jab, you're learning the cross, you're learning the takedown off of that. And then probably on the fourth day, you're learning the sprawl to stop the takedown. Mm-hmm. I don't know that there's necessarily takedown A is better than takedown B. I'm a big fan of we've seen a lot of variants with trips lately, a lot more sort of influence of judo.
The Ronda Rousey effect.
Big fan of those lately. I think they've been a little underused in the past, where guys have been willing to sort of press in against the cage and look for that double or try to run the pipe. We're seeing a lot more sort of foot sweeps and pick that ankle out and sort of just dump you, as opposed to look for the high amplitude slam. But the reason that initial sort of fundamental combo takedown is not as prevalent and is getting stuffed is because it is a fundamental that everybody learns sort of in the first couple of weeks of getting into this sport. So when everybody's got it in their back pocket, it's a little harder to use it at times.
Yes. Basically, it's been used so many times that people know that it's coming and they'll be able to defend it well. And I think, if they continually go to the same combination in every fight, that's going to work against them, because every fight is different. Every opponent is different. You're not going to be able to land the jab cross combo followed by the takedown every single time, because you might have a guy that might defend that really well. And if he defends it really well, he probably is going to take your back as soon as you try to go for that takedown and he spins around. It's just, it really speaks to the evolution of MMA. At one point, guys we're able to
at one point worked really, really well.
Yeah, exactly. You had guys that were one-dimensional, that could do one thing, and they were able to dominate with that one thing. MMA has gotten to a point where it's its own martial art now, really. I mean, guys learn MMA. They don't just come from a judo or a jiu-jitsu background or just a Muay Thai background. They go into the gym day one as, maybe teenagers or even younger, and they learn all the fundamentals of MMA. So if you're going to depend on this one single combination to try to get a fight to the ground, you're probably not going to do very well for yourself. You have to diversify. Got me, it was really tough for me to say that. Diversify and really show, more than just one specific tool in your arsenal. That way you could become, I think, what would be a successful MMA fighter. Now, don't get me wrong, ESK and I, big fans of MMA. I've trained a little MMA and other forms of martial arts. ESK, I'm sure you've dabbled in it too, but we are not professional fighters by any stretch. In fact, I've trained with professional fighters and they have kicked my ass every single time. My one thing that I could really brag about is advancing to side control on Stefan Struve, and that's it. Like, that's the best thing I've ever done. I've even got, I've been beaten by a striker on the ground because he's a pro and I'm just an amateur trying to do what's best and then write it down afterward. So I think that I hope that answers your question, Eric, and it should answer your question because I spell my name the same way you do, and you and I are always going to be on the same page, right? Right. Well, I hope so anyway. ESK, that's viewer mail, reader mail.
That's viewer mail. Reader mail, whatever you want to call it.
It's mail.
That's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Speaking of wrap, our time's up.
Our time is up. It has been fun, as always. It has been a wonderful 3-week start to things. Episode 3, not 4.
Yeah.
Enjoy your time next week. You're bringing on. It's funny. You've already, like, I told you yesterday, I think, that I was going to be, because I leave things for the last minute, because that's just how I do things.
Word up.
I told you yesterday that I was going to be leaving and you would have to find a replacement, and like got up this morning to like Twitter hate mail of stupid Spencer's leaving, but I found a replacement, and it's literally the American version of me, Mr. Dwayne Finley of Bleacher Report and UFC.com and Fight Magazine, who is 100, like, to the point that the only difference between us is he will not say a boot.
Yeah. Thankfully.
That's the only way you will be able to tell us apart. There will not be any crazy Canadian pronunciations the next episode of the Choke MMA podcast.
In fact, Joe Mesquita, Joe Daddy 85 on Twitter, pointed that exact same fact out.
Yes.
They pronounce out and about differently. Can you, as we take the show out, can you pronounce out and about?
No, because I know that I'm on here with you, and Mike Pyle and I had a laugh about this earlier in the week. I forgot that I was speaking to someone from America, so I didn't say out. I said out. And he laughed at me. And that led into a whole conversation about the fact that he still has his Southern boy accent, even though he's lived in Vegas forever. So I apologize for my Canadian isms and pronunciations. You will not have to deal with it for the next couple of weeks. Dwayne Finley will be here because I'm out.
That's right. You are out, and we are out. Episode number 3, not 4, but episode 3 of the Choke MMA podcast. For E. Spencer Kite, I'm Erik Fontanez saying see you next week, or I'll see you next week. He'll see you in like 3 weeks. Bye.